Hi, it's Toulouse and Kat, and welcome to Beyond What's Said, the show about the hidden dynamics behind communication, confidence, and how we connect with each other.
And today we're going to be talking about something that seemingly is a little bit different but completely relevant. It's personal branding. Personal branding seems to be like everyone needs to do it now. It doesn't matter whether you're a student, a professional, business, or whatever. This is like the new resume or the new CV. People look at your public persona and they determine whether you are a good fit for their company or this role. I think in the past, social media used to be just an outlet of like, this is my personal life or this is my views. I don't need to care about what people think about it because it's just me. I do think that has shifted to more and more you need to show who you are, but in a curated form.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And there's no shortage of like coaches or businesses who teach you how to stand out. How do I stand out? How do I make myself visible? Or how do I tell my story, right? You know, storytelling, that's such like a big buzzword nowadays.
It is. No, it
and
really
we'll
is.
look into like the elements of storytelling in a different episode. But today I want to focus on something that I've noticed to be something very interesting. A lot of times people are focusing on the externals. How do I look good on the outside? How do I pile on more achievements, titles, accolades to make myself look good without first discovering what do I at my core already offer?
Exactly.
What are my values? And that covers things like, you know, how am I already valuable and helpful to those around me?
Exactly.
To, you know, what are my values in terms of what do I stand for and what do I not stand for?
Yeah.
And what am I willing to do and not willing to do? And when you don't first have an idea of what that is, you have nothing to anchor it in. And everything else on the external then becomes kind of floaty.
Well, that's the thing, right? We had a great framework last episode that we talked about to deal with anxiety, the REBT framework. And specifically, we spoke about how one of the really good cures for anxiety is to walk into any situation feeling like you have unconditional value or unconditional positive regard of oneself and of others, right?
Yeah.
But okay, so what does that mean to completely value yourself? Like I am worthy no matter where I go. That's an important thought exercise. It's important data to have up here when entering into all sorts of high stakes moments or things that, you know, could lead to adversity, rejection, or failure or whatever. But then how do you articulate that like in a CV, you know, not to sound kind of crass, like, but how do you express that in a way so that like, not only am I inherently valuable, but here is the specific value that I bring to the world.
Right, exactly. And tying back to what you said, Dr. Ellis did say that the first step is knowing your inherent value. And a lot of people haven't really looked at that. So then they can't do everything else following that.
Yeah,
You know, so then that anxiety becomes compounded.
exactly.
And so that's what we're going to explore today is how am I already valuable before the titles, achievements, and accolades?
Exactly.
You know, so that I'm so grounded that I'm not afraid when I walk into any room or any high stakes situation that I'm going to be like, am I even worthy? Yes, you are, because you know you are.
Exactly.
This is what I offer. And no one can tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
So this is something that I remember distinctively this moment from my recent workshop. I was teaching this framework that I've been developing for quite some time. You know, I've been bouncing ideas with you for quite some time. I call it the value forward framework. It started off with like your generic kind of marketing framework, right? The I help who with what positive impact, or like I'm known for this that helps who with what. That line or that formula is widely used nowadays for businesses or personal branding to kind of find like, this is my value and this is why you should pick me over someone else. But I wanted to take that and I wanted to go deeper with it. So I started taking this value component and I put it to how are you already valuable as you are before anything else?
Yeah.
And so I use this exercise to get the students to understand, especially these students who are like 16, 17 years old.
Mm.
They're just about starting to get serious about wrapping up high school. It's no
Yeah.
longer just like, oh, nothing really matters anymore. Like they're starting to think about college, about career. And they're also at a developmental stage where life is confusing.
Yeah. No,
Identity is
definitely.
confusing. Like
Yeah.
they're trying to find themselves. And so getting them to realize that, hey, you are more than your grades or
Yeah.
like your titles or your awards and things like that. So it was, like to my surprise, it was the first time they heard that.
Mm.
No one has really told them that, or maybe they have, but because it came from teachers that they're too familiar with. So you know how kids can get like, if it's from my parents, I'm never gonna
Yeah.
listen to them.
That's exactly.
So that's the benefit of having an external facilitator is that when I tell them that, they're like, oh, well, that's a really good point.
But I think you make a great point about teenagers. We're surrounded by them, both you and I, in our line of work. And what's fascinating about them is it's a time of your life that, on a hormonal level, all sorts of growth happening physiologically, and more than the kind of the biological processes that's happening to their bodies, it's a deeply tribal time. It's a time where you are in these peer groups, and so much of your sense of value and status is derived from external things, where you are situated in any kind of pecking order within your school, and in the pressure cooker atmosphere of international schools where you've worked in the past and I work right now. It's, yeah, how you score, how you rank
Yeah.
in terms of the academic order of things, what universities you're possibly going to get into, what certificates have you earned, so on.
Particularly the type of schools that we're in private schools,
Private
really.
schools,
And
exactly.
so parents pay a lot of money to send their kids for a very good chance for them to get into particular expected university rankings and things like
Mm,
that. And also to expose their kids to certain competitive
yeah,
opportunities so that they can have these experiences as
exactly.
well as these accolades that will boost their chances of getting into
Yeah,
said university of their dreams.
yeah,
And so for them, they've been focusing a lot on that external achievement,
yeah,
which again, I'm not trying to downplay any of that. Those are necessary for like competence, for momentum,
yeah,
for confidence in evidence
yeah,
that you are able to get to these kind of things. But now what I've noticed is that's the whole thing that they worry
yeah,
about. And they start coming to you or I about like all these anxious thoughts and these like physical, actual ailments in their body
yeah,
because of the anxiety of these external validation.
yeah. No, 100%. And I think, confidence in evidence, that's a really interesting framing, because it's like those experiences of competency and mastery, right? If you attach them to a certificate, to an outcome, then it's like it's always uncertain because you can fail. And
Mhm.
if you accumulate enough failures versus successes,
Yeah.
then in your head you can create a balance sheet where all of a sudden I'm not as worthy because I have so many second or third places
Yeah.
or so many rejections, right? So it's instead it should be mastery based on the process, based on the way in which I got to this destination or learned from this experience. That's what makes me a valuable person. That
Mhm.
what allows me to express what my value is. It's because you can collect about 47 different certificates throughout your high school career. You can get all the fives in the AP system or all the sevens in the IB. But ultimately, if you can't put that into concrete terms, like, hey, this was my journey. This is what I learned from it. These are the skills that I acquired. This is like the sort of wisdom that I bring to the table
Mm.
based on all of this, good and bad. If you can't do that, then yeah, you're just like everyone under the sun whose resume is going to read like a rap sheet of awesome trophies and accolades, right? I mean, it's almost to the point where, at least international school kids, I'm sure admissions would probably agree here, you're getting the cream of the crop. You're getting resumes from these students that are packed. It's almost like, everyone back in the day, like, what are your skills? And on your CV, you're like, Microsoft Word,
I remember I put that
Netscape
down.
Navigator, something
My
like that.
high school CV was something like that. It was just
Yeah.
like special skills, Internet Explorer.
Yeah.
We try to put everything under the sun. And nowadays, the kids are putting some wildly
Oh
amazing
my God.
achievements on there. And you know what's funny? It reminds me of that time when we went to a college fair and we
Mm,
spoke to this university rep.
mm,
And he basically confirmed kind of what you just said.
yeah.
It's like we get these applications all the time, and everyone more or less are the cream of the crop,
Mm,
all these very impressive achievements and awards and titles, but what they're looking for is essentially is them. Like, how
yeah.
do you stand out? Who are
Yeah.
you? And what kind of value do you bring outside of these MUN and speaking
Yeah.
5 languages and all that stuff? Because to them,
That's the default setting.
that's kind of the default setting. And
Yeah.
yeah, it is very competitive, if you come from the international school world or private school world. And you brought that up a really good point is that they focus so much on getting the fives in AP or getting the sevens in IB
Mm,
and all these kind of awards. But what happens when you exit out of schooling and you're no longer being judged by
mm,
a particular benchmark
yeah.
score? So if they don't at a younger age find out what is their core value,
Yeah.
which is what you said earlier, it's like, what did I learn from this? What kind of value did I gain? And therefore I'm able to contribute to those around me. That's something that they can bring
Yeah.
well beyond the schooling age.
Yeah.
And I think like a lot of the even adults, they never went through that process because all they focused on was grades. Back then, it was even more about just grades,
Mm,
like what percentage did you get? And then you need to hit a certain mark in order to get to a certain school.
yeah.
And then you hit certain honors or like HD, distinction,
Yeah.
etc., depending on what system you're in. And then you're just then thrusted into life and you're like,
Mm.
I don't know what to do now because there's no rubric. There's
Well,
no
yeah.
standard.
There's no rubric, there's no standard. I mean, there are salary pay scales, there are promotions, there are titles. I'm CEO or I'm vice president or
Right, but
I'm
then
manager, you
then
know?
you very quickly learn that even then it's not fair per se, or it's not like how we used to know
Mm,
from like the schooling system where it's just
mm,
like this is the rubric, this is the benchmark, this is the
yeah.
exemplar,
Yeah.
and all you need to do is try to get as close to that as possible.
Yeah.
You get into the real world, sure, there's promotions, there's titles, all that stuff, but that it comes with so many different shades of gray.
No, it does. Absolutely. And I think that's a lesson I only started realizing much later in my mid to late 30s because a success trap, it's easy to fall into one, right?
Mhm.
Success begets success. And then you think that, well, my brain is constantly trying to predict the best pathways or the best possible routes to get to where I need to get in order to
Mhm.
be a functioning, balanced human being.
A
And
good citizen
a
of
good
the
citizen
world.
of the world, exactly. But it's like, so you're scanning for information, and the information that you're constantly feeding your operating system is that in order to have any kind of sense of worth or self-esteem or value, I just have to keep succeeding. I need to
Mhm.
repeat this outcome or this result over and over again.
And then you talk
Yeah.
about that kind of like feedback, right? I remember there was a study where they basically rigged the game. They're playing poker or some kind of card game,
Mm,
and one group would inherently always win,
okay.
and one group would inherently always lose.
Mm,
And so it's already rigged. They don't know that,
yeah.
but they're playing. And so what the researchers were doing was that they're trying to see what happens over time.
Yeah.
And the group that kept winning, they started becoming more cocky and they start
Yeah.
kind of not like being mean to the other person, but they kind of getting pretty snobby.
Okay.
And then the group that kept losing, you start seeing like their confidence waver. They
Mm,
start having this, what's the point
yeah.
even? So it's really interesting how when you start having those kind of feedback,
Yeah.
depending on what kind of feedback you're getting, it affects how you think of who you are.
Yeah.
When you start anchoring your identity or value to that particular result. And so we talk about we go out into the real world.
Mm,
The effort that you put out that you did once upon a time in school in a very controlled
mm,
environment no longer works anymore.
yeah.
You might put in 110%. You think that this is just the way that I need to do to hit that rubric or to get to as close to that exemplar as possible. And then you start not getting that successful feedback or that
Exactly.
predictable feedback. What does that do to your self-esteem
Yeah.
and how you project your life is going to be?
Yeah.
Well, you
Exactly.
can imagine that if you keep attaching your value to those titles and stuff, how that's going to cause a very negative impact.
Yeah.
Versus if you were to anchor your value in yourself, then it doesn't matter what happens.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, oh, well, I'm still who I am. I'm still this
Mm,
person that brings this particular value. And that could be, I'm very good at explaining something,
yeah.
or I am like a very good listener,
Yeah.
or I'm very good at time management or detail oriented and
Well,
things like that.
no, and the study you brought up actually reminded me of the learned helplessness model, which is a famous model we use to think about depression and whether or not people are susceptible to it. Also, just in general, like how people will define events happening to them. And the
Mm.
original learned helplessness experiment, which goes way back, basically, I'm sort of vulgarizing it, but they had, dogs in apparatuses where the dogs could receive shocks.
Oh, I don't like this.
Psychology for the good of psychology. And basically, there was one group where there was a way for the dogs to figure out essentially how to turn off the electric shocks or how to like
Mm.
get the safety. And then there was another group where no matter what they did, the shocks could not be stopped. And so what they
Mm.
noticed is over time,
I don't
uh,
like the story.
the dogs that were continually shocked with no possibility of changing their situation, they just kind of crumbled and just took it, so to
Mm.
speak. So long story short, you have the whole theory of explanatory styles. So whenever bad things happen to us, we can see them as very situational,
Mm.
very context specific. We could see them as like, all right, well, in this instance, I didn't succeed, or well, there's always other opportunities on the horizon, or there are the negative explanatory styles, permanent, pervasive, and personal. So
Mm.
for example, permanent, like I'm always going to be terrible. Pervasive, everything I do is terrible.
Mm.
Personal, I'm I'm terrible at this, right?
Yeah.
I'm not getting it 100% in the most detailed way. But long story short, you talk about a person who is very successful at racking up achievements
Mm.
and they tether their identity and their sense of value to that. Great. But what if after a while the achievements stop coming in and you
Mm.
encounter a series of setbacks or failures,
Yep.
and then suddenly maybe your style shifts to a more negative, like, man, I can't do anything right,
Yeah.
everything I touch is a failure.
Mm.
Or, man, it doesn't matter if it's my, I don't know, neighborhood basketball league or my job or my relationship with my wife and kids.
Mm.
I just, I'm permanently sucking at everything around me.
Yeah.
Right. Or pervasively sucking at everything that I touch. So that's the thing that's the sort of the trap of anchoring your identity in these accolades and these certificates, in these metrics. It doesn't matter if it's the structured rubrics and benchmarks of competitive test taking, which is what
Mhm.
APIB is all about at the end of the day, or like the world of work where you are measured based on title, salary,
Yeah.
and how you perform.
Yeah.
If you can't find the way to articulate your value sooner rather than later, you may develop a coping mechanism or a style of handling events that happen to you that really sabotage you and that prevent you from seeing value, whether it's a failure or it's a success.
Yeah, another thing that happens is also if something does go your way or you do occasionally
Mm.
get that success, you then start equating that to a fluke
Oh, yeah.
or just like it was just luck.
Oh,
And so it really is like this negative kind of like spiraling situation that's happening. I relate to this a lot. Growing up, when I was in grade 1 and 2, I know I'm going way back, right? I'm not that old,
yeah.
but grade one it was a while.
1872. Okay.
No, but it was back in the 90s.
Yeah. There
Um,
we go.
and so, I remember I was in Taiwan at the time.
Mm,
And in all of my exams, and yes, we were taking exams back in grade 1. Um, it's like I would get 100%.
mm,
That was something that I took pride in
mm,
and something that my family took pride in as well. It's
mm,
just like, look at my daughter. Every time she came home with an exam paper, it was 100%. She
mm,
is the model student. I was deemed as the model student of my grade.
mm.
And I was like titled class captain and I got the authority to police my classmates. When the teacher would leave, be like, all right, you're in charge now until I come back. And
Yeah.
I'd be like, yes, I am. Everyone must listen to me now. And so that was my identity back
Mm,
then. And then things started shifting. when I stopped getting 100%,
Mm,
when I stopped getting even 90%,
mm,
I started like wavering and questioning, and then it just kind of went down from there.
yeah.
And sure, there were some events that were happening at home, but I distinctly remembered if I got anything other than 100%, I would start thinking, I'm not good enough. I need to work harder. I
Mm,
need to do better. And when that stopped working, despite my hard work,
mm,
I started giving up.
I
I was
see.
like, "What's the point?"
Yeah.
So then I remember by grade 3, grade 4, I just kinda gave up. I was just like, "Whatever, I'm just gonna do the bare minimum," and my grades went down to, like, 60, 40 something percent, and, it was what
My
it
grades.
was. And
My average
then
grades.
and then when I grew up, sure, it was like an ebb and flow. I didn't just give up
Mm,
for life. It was ebb and flow where I would hit rock bottom and I'd be like, "You know what? I'm gonna try again." And I would try a little better and then it would do this. But for the longest time, and you'll remember this, I still have this notion that I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
mm,
When things were for an extended period of time was smooth and good,
mm,
I would have this kind of like gnawing feeling in the back of my, mind and being like, it's coming,
mhm.
the
I see.
the ultimate demise is coming.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go through another wave of no matter how hard I try, no matter what I do, it's still going to be bad.
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
It took me a long time, and that's kind of why I built this value forward framework
Mm,
because well into my adulthood, all the way through
mm,
my 20s, teens, 20s, 30s,
yeah.
I still had a lot of success because I am still a very hardworking person. Even though at the time that wasn't what I anchored my identity in. I
Mm,
was just like, I just want to once I get to this role or my breakthrough in acting, or once I get this degree, or
mm,
then everything is going to be smooth sailing, and then never does because I never
yeah.
anchored myself in the right place. And so that kind of drove me to recently really think about building this. I want to help other people starting from a younger age to go, hey, you have value already and you need to start anchoring yourself
Yeah.
in that. And what was really interesting is that in the recent workshop that I facilitated, there was one student who waited until the very end after my 2-hour workshop. And
Mm,
there were other students who came up to talk to me. And she just waited very patiently until the very end. And then she came up to me and said, you're the first person who told me that I have value right now. And I don't need to achieve more before I can be
mm,
valuable.
yeah.
And that really just stayed with me.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminded me of like, I wish someone had told me that when I was young.
Well, and it's interesting because you're talking about first literal first second grade you're talking about a high schooler who said that. I had a realization about all this, about how much of my own self-worth I attach to, getting my undergraduate degree, my graduate degrees, athletic things that I pursued for many, many years and still am pursuing. And now, tethering so much of my sense of identity and worth to a lot of professional benchmarks and things that I want to achieve as a teacher, as a person doing things like this right now. And I'm still not quite, I mean, none of us are really detached from that kind of performance oriented mindset, that achievement
Mhm.
oriented mindset. Like, it took me many, many years to even be aware of the toxicity of having that frame of mind. And I remember, like, one of the first times I ever did any kind of therapy, there was this one wonderful gentleman, this was online during COVID. And I remember he kind of like broke it down in a really simple way, but he pretty much asked me, like, who are you?
Mm.
And I really couldn't answer that question. And it took me a while to really start wrapping my head around, like, who am I
Yeah.
in terms of what I bring to the table as a living, breathing human being? And it's not like it's a conditional thing. Like, I'm only worthy if I bring something to the table. But it was like, there's definitely like concrete skills, certain intelligences, certain behaviors of mine that like just make the world a brighter, better place. But for the life of me, I could not pinpoint any of them
Yeah.
because I had literally just seen the world through this binary prism of success versus failure. And
Mm.
I think, part of why we're doing this is trying to give people that toolkit, whether they're adults or they are much younger kind of making their way through life. And it's like they have that opportunity to kind of declare their independence from this achievement based mindset, not to kind of completely divorce yourself from achievement and from external things, because obviously both extrinsic and intrinsic motivation are needed
That's
to
right.
animate humans and propel them forward in the world. But at the end of the day, it's like understanding that beyond the extrinsic, beyond the external rewards, there's such a rich amount of self-discovery you can do by just sitting down and figuring out how you're already worthy, like right now.
Well, that's the thing is with that formula that I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, the I'm known for this strength that helps who with what positive impact.
Mm,
I initially started using that when I helped with business owners who
mm,
are trying to how to market their business and
yeah,
how to market their brand and things like that. And so it was kind of an exercise that quite frankly is kind of what a lot of people are doing out there. And then I started bringing the formula to the students to try to get them to maybe write their personal statements and
mm,
things like that. Then we realized, okay, how can a student frame that before they have all the work experience and life experience that
yeah,
they can draw from? Like they
yeah,
all they have is this contained environment, this
yeah,
controlled environment that they can work with. And what if the students who aren't the presidents of the student council, who aren't the team captains and things like
exactly.
that, that they can put on their resume?
Yeah.
And so from there, that's where I developed this. Let's go a little bit deeper
Mm,
to what you already offer currently.
yeah.
And then that unlocked so many facets of just seeing them kind of go, wait a minute.
Mm,
Wow, I have value right now.
yeah.
And that's when I learned that so many of us adults, like you, your experience, like my experience, like it took us until we're 40 years old to understand. And some may not ever find
Yeah.
that they have inherent value all along.
Yeah. I think the idea that high schoolers don't have a lot to hang on to put their value out there, so to speak, their professional value, like just the concrete metrics, right? It's true because they're literally just starting to build a portfolio of achievements and things that they've done and what sort of positive contributions that they bring. But what was interesting is getting teenagers to kind of reflect on their existing hobbies,
Mm,
whether it's gaming or taking care of their pets or very mundane things
yeah.
that they wouldn't find value in. So, one student, for example, has many pets. And that's like, okay, well, that's like, I'm a nurturing person that
Mm,
cares about small, vulnerable things.
yeah.
And, or just getting a lot of the other students, the gamers who are okay, like you like to play large amounts of video games, but of course, whether it's playing like a multiplayer game, team cooperation, or even like designing your own racetracks or designing your own levels, it's like I'm detail oriented.
Yeah.
I'm good at crafting virtual worlds with obstacles and things that people have to solve and figure out, right? So it's almost like this is a very basic thing that a lot of the teenagers in your workshops have shown is that
Mhm.
I could literally point to my love of reading, my love of sports, or my pets and all those around me. And from that, I can draw
Mm,
positive attributes, qualities, right?
that's right.
We talk about values, like what are values? We're not
Yeah.
talking about these timeless moral essences. We're
Yeah.
just talking about what you as a person prioritize,
Mm,
what you value as something important says something about the sort of skills, the kind of thing you bring
yeah.
to the human species.
That's right. That's right. And I think humans are supposed to be they're communal creatures.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
not supposed to be alone.
yeah,
And so that means we're built into to come into this world with inherent qualities that we can
yeah,
contribute to one another. And so, something as mundane as like I love playing video games. Well, great. You have very quick, like you said, attention to details
attention to
that
detail.
you
Yeah,
can translate to other things
mm,
that actually opens up, in our previous episode, we had talked about like the narrowed purview when you
mm,
say, I am only, or I must, or I should.
yeah,
Now you're giving them the tools to be able to come up the surface and widen,
yeah,
broaden their purview. Be like, oh, so it turns out my love for video games is not just a useless hobby that
yeah.
my parents keep hounding me about. It's like I can actually use this towards other things.
Yeah, and even like for example, I am the type of person that loves to obsess over like how I shoot a basketball or take a very like simple skill
Mm,
that any teenager likes to drill over and over again, right? Like a physical skill.
mm,
And you could say, okay, well, you have discipline, you have consistency,
yeah.
you have a type of perseverance, right? You really want to nail down this particular skill or ability, and you're willing to put in a lot of work and a lot of hours. And that's something that, people need. We need, more than ever in the sort of the digital age that we live in with all the distractions. Like if you have the ability to sit down and focus on a given thing for an extended period of time, you're already ahead of a lot of people who are chronically needing all sorts of distractions and stimulation. So there's that, and it's starting with these sort of core fundamentals.
And
Like,
I get a lot of questions like, or like not so much questions, like responses when they go, yeah, but that's just me. Like, how is that useful,
mm,
to other people? But I think like when you're able to discover this thing that you're really into, such as obsessing over the details of a particular movement,
mm,
how is that useful across? Well, once you know that that's you being very disciplined, that you very, you have attention to details, you have an analytical eye,
mm,
a lens, then the people around you could use that.
yeah,
Because now you're like, well, I'm very analytical. Great. I need
yeah,
someone to look at this movement so that it helps our team,
yeah,
our basketball team, become an undefeatable dream team kind of thing.
yeah,
Now you're bringing something, outside, but you have to first identify
yeah,
that particular strength.
yeah,
And also another thing is that someone who says, I don't know, I'm just very detail oriented or whatever. I'm very disciplined in this particular thing, that could also inspire those around you, be like, "Oh, maybe I could be a little bit more disciplined,
yeah,
in this particular thing."
exactly.
And all of these things, whether it's for yourself or for those around you, it all starts with identifying what is your core value.
Exactly. And this is an exercise I think that adults need to do as well. Where, okay, am I a really good listener? Am I the peacemaker between my friends or my
Do I
children?
am I calm when pressure hits?
Am I calm when pressure hits? Am I the type of person that when I decide to change my behavior or start a new routine, am I going to be the type to really like hold steadfastly onto
Mm,
it, right? Am I a deeply principled person? I think
mm.
starting with those ground floor fundamentals is a nice way to like get a sense of what your value is.
Well, I think you hit upon a point that's like super important is that am I a really principled person or am I all that stuff? That's the ground level. From there, not only do you contribute to those around you, it also gives you a framework of where
Mm,
do I draw my boundaries?
yeah.
Because like if I must say like hypothetically, this is not hypothetical. I am a very principled person.
Mm,
But sometimes I get very particular about like this is what I'm gonna do and this isn't what I'm gonna do.
yeah.
But before knowing that about myself, maybe the lines will be blurred. People may want to be like, but it's just this. Well, it's fine, right? Just do it. And then if I don't know my identity as a very principled person, I might
Mm,
just go, oh yeah, well, I guess so. But then I walk away feeling it doesn't sit with my identity well. It doesn't sit with my
yeah.
core well
Yeah.
because that's not who I am. Kind of like you're someone who values serenity and calm.
Yeah.
And so when at home there chaos reigns,
Mm,
then if you don't know that that's what you value or that's inherently who you are,
mm,
then you're going to perpetually feel frustrated because it's
yeah.
like my kids aren't doing anything wrong, they're just being kids, but why do I feel so frustrated and frazzled? And so that's where your boundary kind of
Yeah.
goes. And of course, it's being mindful of both sides, right?
Yeah.
You're not trying to control them, but at the same time letting them know,
Yeah.
hey, there's going to be times where I need my space in order to be who I really am.
Yeah. Or like, for example, I'm a person that I really am averse to conflict and tensions and stuff like that. Okay. So you value conciliation, you value connection. So you're the type of person that will go out there and really try to create optimal conditions where people are having healthy relationships. So kind of like starting from those first principles or those basic premises of what you value as a person, which again, values, they're flexible. They're like things that you prioritize, and maybe your values are going to be different from other people's. And so looking for particular roles, particular opportunities that match your values, that match what you're all about. And also, it gives you ammunition to talk about yourself in an interview setting or in, especially like these moments where People that will talk about yourself.
Well, it's like the classic questions like, "What's your weakness?"
I'm a
"I'm a perfectionist."
perfectionist.
Exactly.
You know?
So the fact that we even said that
Yeah,
together,
yeah,
it means that
yeah.
it's such a meme.
No, it is a meme. Yeah, or
But,
yeah,
knowing yourself, it would be like, okay, so using the common serenity thing, it's just like, well, I work suboptimally if there's a lot of chaos and noise around me.
yeah,
Then it shows to the employer that you know that about yourself.
yeah,
It's not so much to that they need to then accommodate to you. It's more just like you show them that this person understands who they are, what
yeah.
they stand for, what they don't stand for.
Self-awareness, yeah.
Self-awareness is so important.
And think about it, like interview questions. It's like, okay, talk about something that you dealt with and you solved. And I always froze in these moments, but it's like, if I let the employer know that, okay, well, I once upon a time realized that I operate best when the environment is calm and serene, and that a lot of like noise and distraction really affects me, then you could also think of a time where, all right, well, there was a particular tense period at my workplace where I felt a lot more distracted, a lot more stressed out because there were a lot of variables that I couldn't control. There were a lot of changes happening. But then what did I do? Well, I decided to go on routine walks around the office block because that really kind of calmed me down and regulated me after a lot of noise and a lot of chaos around me. So it's almost like if you're self reflective and you show them that, I think you'll be able to find all sorts of moments where you realize, oh, these are my values in action.
And so all of these questions in interviews or in how you position yourself to try to stand out, whether it's for admissions officers reading your application or if it's like you're trying to talk to a prospect or potential client,
Yeah.
these are all things that start with knowing what your value is and then being able to expand upon that.
Yeah.
It's also how does it relate to other people?
Yeah.
Like, how should the other person care, right? Now that we're bringing back to the whole more practical side of things.
This is something I used to do all the time, and I'm a little bit more aware of it now. If you're interviewing at a particular place, or if you're applying for a scholarship, or if you're doing anything that requires you convince a group of people that you are worthy of them bestowing you with a title or with a job or with money, like look at the mission statement, look at the core values of this entity, this organization, the group of people you have in front of you. Is there alignment? Because if there is, if your core values as a person that is about principles or about calmness or about problem solving, if you're all about that and there's alignment, that gives you so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Because then they're going to be like, hey, talk about why you're a good fit for this role. And yeah, you can say, like, I'm an Excel spreadsheet master, and I'm sure maybe they're looking for that.
Hey, you never know.
Exactly.
You never know what they're looking for, but yeah.
But it's like, this is an organization that values precision, and I'm the kind of person that really worries about precision and accuracy because it's just a core value of mine.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of get into specifics about things you've done in the past that reflect
Well,
that
that's
core
it. It's like
value.
you're not supposed to be for everyone. And so
Exactly.
even when it comes to like personal branding, it really is like this is what I'm about and I'm trying to find alignment
Yeah.
and see how I can help you. And therefore, we talk about like value is not just what I say I'm valuable, it's how other people perceive you. And
Mm,
so I'm literally just it's almost like a bit of like a radar detector. It's
mm.
like once I know this is where I'm anchoring myself, I'm like beep 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 who is
Incoming missile. Yeah, sorry.
no, it's like and then you're looking for companies or employers or prospects or whoever that you're talking to or potential mate,
Yeah.
partner is that is there alignment there?
Yeah.
But they can't come and align you if you're not anchored, you're floating around. It's very hard to lock in.
And I think that's the probably the most important thing about this episode. On a closing note, really, okay, so you have values and you're looking for that alignment. And sometimes you may not find alignment in things that
And that's
you really
okay.
want. And that's okay
And that's
because
not reflective of the fact that you don't have value.
exactly.
You still stay anchored and you just need to find
Yeah.
those who align with you. And so, yeah, that's all for today. And
Hmm.
we'll continue to explore more
Yeah.
facets because I think that there's so much to going on in the Value 4 framework that we want to continue to explore. But today was just more of like a broad stroke, like we're
Sure.
covering multiple
Yeah.
areas. So
Absolutely.
yeah, we'll go get into more specifics next time. All right. Have a wonderful day. Bye. See you next
Bye.
time.